Well, here is cardinal aggregation example. The traditional example of cardinal aggregation is the intelligence agency telephone book. It's just a telephone book, for example. Individual entries are unclassified, but the total book is classified. Is an example from this reference. This reference is a very old reference actually, but the example is very famous here. That's why I use this example here. The challenge with this example is understanding what information the agency is trying to protect with the policy. It's the name and the number of staff personnel and therefore capability of each or some organizational elements. The total staffing size of the agency, identification of special employee, special skills. Here, so we have a telephone book and the information, the individual entries are unclassified. But the total book is classified. Here is the challenge. What information the agency is trying to protect from with the policy? The agency lets anyone, for example, the users, have access to individual entries, records Y1Y. This is unclassified, but the total book is classified. Why this is policy? Why this policy the agency is using is the name and number of staff personnel or the staff size of this agency or identification of special employee or the skills of each employee. What information they are trying to hide from public. This example is used to show that somehow some policies that the agency or for example, a company is using, it's not as simple as the other policies that we are trying to teach in this class. In some simple policies like the DAC, for example, or MAC, we have, for example, we say this user can have access to this information, that user can have access to that information. They are very simple. But overally, the policies may be some kind of very complicated because maybe you can have access to just one data, but you don't have access to all data globally or generally. Somehow it's the opposite way. We can have access to aggregate or inference or summary of data, but you don't have access to individual record. There are some special policies here. And so we have to explain, we have to show what information is actually important and needs to be protected. This is cardinal aggregation policy, which says that maybe the cardinality of information, the aggregation of information is more important for us. It's the opposite way of the other example that I give you. It's the opposite actually. We say that what's the cardinality? Actually, the cardinality is, for example, how many records in this table, how many records are in student table. We say it is cardinality of a relation or cardinality of table is the number of records. So the cardinal aggregation policy means that somehow the information aggregation or inference or statistic about data is more important from one individual data. Is another example. And when we have such databases, then the cardinal aggregation policy will be applied in this situation. It's just the definition of cardinal um, aggregation policy, and if we have time in the end of the semester, I will go back to this one too. Is it clear, Mr. Qasim? Can you explain?
أخوان البيانات نسميها البيانات العامة أو الخاصة، العفو العامة هي. ما مثلا ضربت مثال وكالة المخابرات، الوكالات الأمنية. شنو فرق الكاردينال اجريجيشن عن الاجريجيشن فانكشن؟ ديك حول البيانات الخاصة بداخل الجدول، مثلا المعدل في شيء أكبر أصغر، هذا لا، يريد بيانات على كل الجدول، مثل عدد القيود في الجدول، عدد من خلالها يحصل على عدد المنتسبين اللي موجودين بيها، تداخل الصلاحيات والسماحيات يسبب هاي المشكلة. فيجب أن تكون هاي البيانات يقول بمنأى عن الوصول بالانفرنسز. البيانات اللي تسعى للمحافظة عليها الدائرة أو الوكالة، مثلا الاسم، الهوية، معلومات عن المنتسبين، لازم تكون غير معروضة. طبعا حتى باستخدام التقنيات قالت الداك والماك، الداتا اكسس والمانديتري اكسس، بعد ذلك ايضا لازم هاي البيانات تحمى وتوضع في مكان بعيد عن تداخل الاستنتاجات الإحصائية السابقة.
Thank you. So, and we have here, there is one way, one simple way, for example, to make this information more secure. Sensitive fields exist in database only when viewed row-wise. It means if the user can see the information in, for example, one record of information, this is very sensitive, but you can have access to a statistic of data. So database administrator, the admin of system, must not allow, for example, names to be associated with sensitive attributes. There is a rule. This rule applied here. N items over K% rule. This rule, N items over K%. It means do not respond if N items represents over K% of the result. This example is a very good example for this. One record represents over 100% of result. Why? You have this, for example, select count star from this, for example, medical data, where some conditions are applied or satisfied. Here we have females, certain age group, in certain zip code. This is the where part. When you say count them, the result is one, just one record. And then this represents over 100% result. It means 100% you can associate the name of this patient to the name of this person who is in the voter list. So there can be a rule, a policy. When the result of a statistical query is 1, 2, 3, is a very small portion, it's a small part of the database, the query system will not show the result to user. There just can be a message from the database system that you cannot have access to this information. Why? Because the result of this statistical data is just one record, and there is a risk that the user can have access to the exact information and the record. This is a very good example here. So this rule says if the response of a query is n items, for example, n records, and represents over k%, for example, 70%, 90%, you can define this, of result, then do not respond. The query will not be run, and the user cannot see the response. Is there a problem with sound for everyone? No? So maybe it's in your side, Mr. Omar. Well, thank you. Well, Mr. Qasim, do you want to explain this? And I will go to the...
Thank you, دكتور. بعدنا اخوان بالاستنتاج البيانات الدقيقة او الحساسة من قواعد البيانات. هنا يقول ممكن باستخدام السماحيات ان يصل المتطفل الى قيد واحد حتى وان كان عند السماحيات او شيء. فيقول يجب ان نمنع الوصول الى قيود فردية. بس وضعوا قاعدة، وضعت القاعدة اللي هي إذا كانت نسبة النتائج من الاستعلام أو الاستفسار اللي مطالبه الشخص، مثلا نسبة النتائج 101% أو 2% أو 3%، نسبة معينة، هذه النتائج إذا طلعت عندك يجب أن تمنع عن الكشف للشخص. ليش؟ لأن هاي البيانات راح تمثل خطورة عن شخص محدد. مثلا بس إذا كانت عندك نسبة الاستعلام 80%، 70%، 50%، وهكذا، النتائج مقبولة أن تكون ما بها خطورة، فماكو أي مشكلة بعرضها. فهم وضعوا القاعدة اللي موجودة هذه عليها تحدد أن نسبة الN من الكي، يعني عدد النتائج الظاهرة عندك تكون نسبتها مقبولة أكثر، خلينا نقول حدد حسب ما أكثر، خلينا نقول من 30%. هذا مسموح له. اللي أقل خلينا نقول لا، ما مسموح له أن تعرض هذه البيانات. Thank you.
Thank you. And here are types of attacks. Mr. Omar, your friends are okay with the sound, so there is maybe some issue with your internet or your system. Maybe you can restart the system or log out and log in again. I don't know. Type of attacks. The first one is direct attack. Aggregate computed over a small sample, so individual data item leaked, like the example. The aggregation is computed over a small group, for example, just 1, 2, 3 records. So there is a chance for attacker to find the exact information and record. Then we have indirect attack combines several aggregates. For example, one query after another query, and then the attacker reach to some results. Tracheal attack, it's type of indirect attack, very effective. It means that it's one type of indirect attack, which I will give you an example later. It's just, for example, tracking some information, but I cannot explain here. I must give you an example. I will give you example later. Linear system vulnerability, it means takes tracker attacks further using algebraic relations between query sets to construct equation yielding desired information. Vulnerability, it means it's very, for example, weak system. When you are using a weak system, it's vulnerable. Vulnerable, it means it's very sensitive, it's very weak for attacks. And then the attacker will use some relations, some algebraic, like mathematics, query sets to construct equation yielding desired information. It's somehow complicated for attacker, but using for example, linear equation, for example, some comparing results with each other, then the attacker can reach some results which are sensitive data, and actually he or she doesn't have access to them. I will give you example. Just Mr. Omar, can you explain this just?
سوري دكتور. اخوان، انواع الاختراق او انواع الهجوم اعطتنا عندك 4 انواع. اول واحد الدايركت اتاك باستخدام الدوال الاحصائيه. عدة دوال احصائيه تقدر ان تحصل على بيانات شخص معين، فيكون هذا عندك تسرب بالبيانات مالته. 2 الهجوم الغير مباشر، يستخدم عدة بيانات احصائيه، يعني خلينا نقول يتوأم بيناتهم حتى يحصل على بيانات وحده. هناك لا، دايركت باستخدام وحده. خلينا نقول التراكر اتاك تعقب المسار، أيضا نوع من أنواع الهجوم، وهذا فريق جدا فعال يكون عندنا. النوع الرابع اللي هو السيستم فولنربيلتي أو سنسيتيف. هنا أكو ضعف بالنظام يستغل المهاجم باستخدام دوال جبرية أو دوال رياضية ويا الاستفسارات مالاته، ويركب استفسارات جديدة أو كويري جديدة حتى يحصل على البيانات المستهدفة أو البيانات المطلوبة. إذا هو هنا يستخدم الدوال الرياضية
Thank you. Here is a table. I will go further and give you example, and then I will come back here. Well, first of all, often databases protected against delivering small responses to queries. As I said before, if statistical query, for example, the count of some information, is using a small group of records. For example, you can define the threshold, minimum, for example. Delivering small responses set to queries, this will not be run. Trackers can identify unique value. For example, request n and n-1 values. Given n and n-1, we can easily compute the desired single elements. For example, we want to see some information. We are running a query on n items, then we are running queries on n-1 items, and if you discount, if you, for example, have this value, for example, A, and this B, A minus B maybe will give you some results. Let me give you an example, maybe on this. Not very good. For example, on salary. And you have access to sum of salary. But you want to see how what's the average salary. You don't have access to average salary of some person or an individual, but you can have this query, sum. If you compute sum of salaries of n person, n clients, n person in company, and then you compute the salary, the sum of salary of n-1 person, which results B, and then you compute A minus B, you will deduce the average salary, for example, for one person in this company. You can compute the information. There can be some policies and some limitation which doesn't allow the users to have some certain queries after each other. Because the system, the database management system knows that if there are some kinds of query running one after each another one, then maybe some results you will have, and you can go to some certain values. You can result some certain values. So there is a point. First of all, don't let queries which are using some small group of records, for example, small record 1, 2.
Sorry, Doctor, I have a query before I explain the slide to my friends. This slide.
Yes, this is slide.
If the statistical or the person get the count of records of the table, and after that he done another aggregate function, like sum of salary, select sum of salary of n, he get all salaries to that organization. When he
Yes.
done another query, select sum of salary to n minus 1, he can reach to one person. Is that right of this slide to explain?
Yes. Yes, yes. This example which you gave me is a form of attack actually. The attack which you can use some aggregation functions, and then you reach to some special person, for example, salary or the average salary of all the clients in a company. This is a form of attack. So we have to use some special policies here. Then we can prohibit and we can
Thank you دكتور. هون بعدنا هنا بالاستنتاج. تحتاج بيانات خاصة من البيانات العامة اللي عندك. غالبا ما تكون قواعد البيانات محمية من الاستنتاج الصغير، هنقول يعني مثلا قيد 1 أو قيدين. التراكر أو المتعاقب المسار يحصل على معلومة واحدة يمتى يقدر يحصل عليها إذا كان عنده حصل على عدد القيود مالت الجدول اللي عندك، فراح يقدر يوصل مثلا هم عددهم خلينا نقول 50، راح يقدر يوصل n ناقص 1 راح يفتر 49، فراح يحصل على بيانات خاصة بشخص واحد. لذا يقول احنا لازم نمنع الوصول المتعاقب